The night before my wedding, I stood in the bathroom of my apartment staring at my reflection, trying to convince myself that I was a lucky man. I had a fiancée who loved me, a stable job with benefits, a mortgage on a tidy two-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood. My parents were proud. My friends envied me. On paper, I had won. So why did I feel like I was about to jump off a cliff? Her name was Laura. We'd been together for 3 years. She was practical, disciplined, and kind in a steady, predictable way. She believed in 5-year plans and shared spreadsheets. When we talked about the future, it sounded like a well-organized presentation: promotions, investments, 2 children by 35. Before Laura, there was Maya. Maya was chaos. She was art galleries at midnight, spontaneous road trips, arguments that burned hot and ended in laughter. She was the only person who ever made me feel fully seen and fully terrified. Loving her felt like standing too close to a fire, thrilling but dangerous. I met Maya when I was 26 and broke, trying to launch a freelance design career that barely paid my rent. She was working 2 part-time jobs and chasing her dream of becoming a photographer. We fed each other's ambition, but we also amplified each other's instability. Some months we barely scraped by. We fought about money constantly. I remember one winter when our heating got cut off for 2 days because we'd miscalculated our bills. I told myself love wasn't supposed to feel like survival mode. When Laura entered my life, she was the opposite of everything that scared me about Maya. We met at a corporate networking event I only attended because I needed steady work. Laura worked in finance. She talked about long-term security like it was romance. She admired my creativity but gently suggested I apply for a full-time position at her company. Within 6 months, I had a salary, health insurance, and a clear career path. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't afraid of checking my bank account. Around that same time, Maya and I had one of our worst fights. She accused me of selling out. I accused her of refusing to grow up. We said things we couldn't take back. When I walked out of her apartment that night, I told myself it was over. Laura felt safe. Loving her felt like building something solid brick by brick. My parents adored her. They had always worried about Maya. Too unpredictable, too artistic, too uncertain. With Laura, they relaxed. My mother once told me, "You look calmer now." Calmer. Not happier. Not more alive. Just calmer. I proposed to Laura on a quiet beach during a weekend getaway she had carefully planned months in advance. She cried. I smiled. I remember thinking, this is what a smart decision feels like. But as the wedding approached, memories of Maya started creeping in at night. Not just the good parts. Even the fights felt vivid and real compared to the polite disagreements Laura and I had about furniture or vacation destinations. 2 weeks before the wedding, I ran into Maya by accident. I was leaving a coffee shop near my office when I heard my name. I turned around, and there she was, hair shorter, camera slung over her shoulder, eyes exactly the same. My stomach dropped. We stood there awkwardly at first, exchanging the safe updates people give exes. She had moved to a new apartment. She'd started getting real clients. Her work was being featured in small exhibitions. She looked steady, not reckless, not desperate, steady. Then she asked about me. I told her about the job, the house, the wedding. The wedding, she repeated. Yeah, next month. She nodded slowly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I hope you're happy. That question lingered between us like smoke. I wanted to say yes immediately. Instead, I hesitated just long enough for her to notice. We ended up sitting at a nearby bench, talking longer than we should have. She told me she'd gone to therapy, that she'd realized she'd been afraid of stability because she associated it with losing herself. She admitted she'd pushed me away because she thought I would eventually leave anyway. I confessed that I'd been scared too. Scared of never feeling secure. Scared of building a life on passion alone. When I finally stood up to leave, she said quietly, I would have learned how to build something steady with you, if you'd given me the chance. That sentence has been echoing in my head ever since. The night before my wedding, I picked up my phone 3 times, considering texting her. Not to call off the wedding, just to hear her voice. Just to know the door wasn't completely closed. I didn't text her. The next day, I stood at the altar. Laura walked down the aisle in a dress that fit her perfectly, her smile bright and certain. Everyone was watching us, waiting. When the officiant asked if I took her to be my wife, there was a split second, barely noticeable to anyone else, where I imagined saying no. Instead, I said yes. And as the applause filled the room, I felt something inside me go quiet in a way that wasn't peace. The honeymoon was flawless. That's what everyone said when we came back. The photos looked perfect. Blue water, white sand, Laura laughing with her hair caught in the wind. We stayed at a resort she had researched for months, booked with loyalty points and strategic credit card rewards. Every dinner reservation was secured in advance. Every excursion timed down to the minute. I remember standing on a balcony overlooking the ocean while Laura slept inside, listening to the waves and feeling like an actor who had memorized all his lines but forgotten why he was in the play. Laura was happy. She held my hand constantly. She talked about how grounded she felt being married. She said she'd never been more certain about anything in her life. I told myself certainty was a gift. When we got back home, married life settled into a rhythm almost immediately. We combined bank accounts. We reviewed our monthly budget every Sunday evening. We planned renovations for the house. Laura liked to map out our goals in color-coded spreadsheets projected onto the living room TV. I played along. I even enjoyed parts of it. Watching our savings grow felt strangely satisfying. My job at her company had become stable, predictable. I was promoted within the first year. The pay increase meant we could accelerate our mortgage payments. From the outside, we were thriving. But something else was happening quietly in the background. Every time I saw a photograph, on a billboard, online, in a magazine, something in me tightened. I started following photography accounts late at night, scrolling through images that reminded me of Maya's style. Raw, emotional, unpolished. I told myself it was harmless nostalgia. About 8 months into the marriage, I ran into Maya again. This time it wasn't an accident. I had seen a post about a local exhibition featuring emerging photographers. I recognized her name in the event description. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before deciding I was just being supportive. That was the word I used to justify it. Supportive. I told Laura I was working late. The gallery was small but crowded. Wine glasses clinked against soft background music. I spotted Maya across the room before she saw me. She was talking to a couple, gesturing toward one of her framed photographs, a black and white portrait of an older man staring straight into the lens with quiet defiance. She looked confident, not chaotic, not unstable, confident. When our eyes met, I saw surprise flicker across her face, then something warmer. "You came," she said. "Of course," I replied, as if I had every right to be there. We talked about her work. She told me she'd secured a contract with a local magazine, that she'd finally saved enough to feel secure on her own terms. I congratulated her, meaning it. Then she asked, gently, "How's married life?" I hesitated again. That pause was becoming a habit. "It's good," I said. "Stable." She nodded slowly. "You always wanted that." "Yeah," I said, though even as I spoke, I wasn't sure it was true. We ended up leaving the gallery together, walking down the street under dim lights. It felt dangerously familiar. Our steps unconsciously fell into the old rhythm we used to share. "I thought about you on your wedding day," she admitted. I almost reached out. "But I figured if you chose her, you had your reasons." "I did," I said quickly. "I do." "Are they still the same reasons?" she asked. The question landed harder than I expected. I didn't answer. Instead, I asked about her new apartment. She invited me to see it, casually, without pressure. I should have said no. I didn't. Her apartment was modest but warm. Photographs covered the walls. There was a small dining table by the window, a plant in the corner, soft music playing from a speaker on the kitchen counter. It didn't feel chaotic. It felt intentional. We sat on the couch, closer than we should have. Conversation drifted from safe topics to deeper ones. Regrets. Fear. The choices that shape a life. "I never stopped loving you," she said quietly. The air between us shifted. "I'm married," I replied, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. "I know," she said. "I'm not asking you to leave her. I just need to know if what we had was real." "It was," I said immediately. Too immediately. Silence filled the room. The kind that vibrates. She leaned in first, slowly enough that I could have moved away. I didn't. The kiss wasn't frantic. It was worse than that. It was familiar. It felt like coming home to a place I had convinced myself didn't exist anymore. I pulled back after a few seconds, my heart racing. "This can't happen," I said. "It already did," she whispered. I left soon after, guilt spreading through me like poison. On the drive home, I rehearsed explanations I would never give. By the time I walked through the front door, Laura was at the kitchen counter reviewing something on her laptop. "You're late," she said lightly. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I answered, hanging up my jacket. "Just work." She smiled at me with complete trust. That was the first night I realized stability can be its own kind of prison. I didn't tell Laura about the exhibition. I didn't tell her about the kiss. Instead, I tried to overcompensate. I planned date nights. I bought flowers. I agreed to start discussing timelines for having children. But the line had been crossed. And once you know there's another version of your life still within reach, pretending you don't see it becomes exhausting. For weeks after the gallery, I told myself it had been a lapse, a moment of weakness fueled by nostalgia and ego. I convinced myself that good husbands make mistakes and then correct them quietly. They don't blow up their lives over one kiss. So I didn't call Maya. I also didn't block her. That felt too final. Laura and I moved forward with our plans. We met with a financial advisor to discuss long-term investments. We talked seriously about trying for a baby within the year. She began browsing parenting blogs at night, occasionally turning her laptop toward me to show nursery ideas. "Can you imagine a little one running around here?" she asked one evening, standing in what we planned to turn into a second bedroom. I tried to picture it. Toys on the floor, crayons on the walls, a small voice calling me dad. Instead, what flashed in my mind was Maya's apartment. The photos, the quiet music, the way she had looked at me like I was still something unfinished in her life. "Yeah," I said finally. "I can imagine it." Laura smiled and wrapped her arms around me. She felt solid, dependable, the kind of partner you build retirement plans with. But at night, when she slept, I would lie awake replaying that kiss. Not the physical part, the certainty of it. The way it confirmed that whatever I felt for Maya hadn't dissolved with time or paperwork. 2 months later, Maya texted me. It was simple. "I'm not going to pretend that night didn't matter." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I should have ignored it. That would have been the mature choice. Instead, I wrote back. It mattered. That was the beginning. We didn't jump straight into an affair. At least, that's how I justified it. We started with coffee, public places, conversations about work, about growth, about who we were becoming. She told me therapy had forced her to confront her fear of being abandoned. I told her marriage had forced me to confront how much I equated love with security. "You chose the safer path," she said once, stirring her drink. "I don't blame you for that. I thought I was choosing adulthood," I replied. "And now?" I didn't answer. The emotional line blurred before the physical one did. I began comparing everything. When Laura and I had disagreements, I measured them against the raw honesty I had with Maya. When Maya laughed at one of my jokes, I felt something expand in my chest that I hadn't felt in months. I started lying more easily. Client dinner, late meeting, traffic was terrible. Each lie chipped away at something inside me, but I kept going. The second time Maya and I kissed, it wasn't hesitant. It was deliberate. We were in her apartment again. I remember looking at the framed photographs on her walls and thinking how strange it was that my life could split in two depending on which door I walked through. After that, we crossed every boundary I had promised myself I wouldn't. I won't romanticize it. It wasn't just passion. It was confusion, guilt, hunger, fear. Every time I left her place, I felt both alive and disgusted with myself. Laura noticed the shift before she confronted it. "You seem distant," she said one night while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Is work stressing you out?" "A little," I replied. She stepped closer, searching my face. "If something's wrong, I need you to tell me." We promised each other transparency. That word hit hard. Transparency. "I know," I said. "I'm just tired." She accepted the answer, but I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. The real breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon. Laura had invited her parents over for lunch. We were sitting around the dining table, discussing vacation plans, when her mother asked about grandchildren. Laura laughed and said, "Soon, hopefully." Everyone looked at me expectantly. And suddenly, the idea of bringing a child into a life built on deception made my chest tighten. That evening, after her parents left, Laura approached me again. "You hesitated," she said. "About what?" "About the baby. You didn't look excited." I could have lied again. It would have been easy. Instead, something in me cracked. "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted. Her expression changed immediately. Not angry. Not yet. Hurt. "Ready for a baby? Or ready for this marriage?" she asked quietly. The question hung in the air, heavier than anything Maya had ever said to me. I opened my mouth to respond. And for the first time since the wedding, I realized I didn't have a rehearsed answer. I didn't answer her that night. I stood there in our kitchen, the smell of leftover food still lingering in the air, and chose silence. Laura watched me like she was waiting for a verdict. "I'm just overwhelmed," I finally said. "Work's been intense. The promotion comes with more responsibility than I expected." It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Laura nodded slowly, but I could see she didn't fully believe me. She reached for my hand, and I let her. Her grip felt steady, grounding. "We can wait a few months," she said. "There's no rush. I need to know we're moving forward together." Forward. The word echoed in my head long after we went to bed. The next day, Maya asked if we could talk. Not meet casually. Talk. Her tone in the message was different. Serious. We met at a park halfway between our neighborhoods. It was late afternoon, gray sky, threatening rain. She looked nervous, which wasn't common for her. "I can't keep doing this in between," she said without preamble. "In between what?" I asked, though I knew. "In between being your past and your secret." The word secret made my stomach tighten. "I never meant for this to turn into," I began. "An affair," she finished for me. Hearing it out loud made it uglier. She crossed her arms, hugging herself against the cold. "I told myself I didn't care if you were married, that I just needed closure. But this isn't closure. It's torture. I wanted to defend myself, but there was nothing to defend." "You're asking me to leave her," I said quietly. "I'm asking you to choose," she replied. "Even if you don't choose me." The honesty in that hit harder than any ultimatum. "I don't want to be the woman you run to when you're unhappy," she continued. "And I don't want to be the reason you destroy your life. But I also don't want to keep pretending we're just two people having coffee." The rain started lightly, cold drops tapping against the pavement. "I thought I chose already," I admitted. "You chose safety," she said. "Not love." Her words felt unfair. Laura loved me. I loved Laura, in a way. But Maya was right about one thing. My choice had been calculated. "I can't promise I'll leave her," I said. "Then you need to promise you'll stay," she answered. That was the trap. Either option required certainty I didn't have. We stood there in the rain, neither of us moving. Finally, she stepped back. "I'm done until you figure it out," she said. "No more texts. No more late nights. If you come back to me, it has to be because you're free, not because you're bored or confused." Then she walked away. For the first time since this started, I felt panic instead of thrill. That night at home, Laura was sitting at the dining table with a stack of papers. She looked up when I walked in. "We need to talk," she said. My heart started pounding. "I got a call today," she continued. "From HR." The room seemed to shrink. "They're conducting an internal review," she said carefully. "Apparently someone reported concerns about boundaries between employees." Cold washed over me. Laura's eyes locked onto mine. "Is there something I need to know?" Maya didn't work at the company, but I did. And my sudden late nights had involved using company time more than once to message her. If someone had noticed. "It's probably nothing," I said too quickly. "Look at me," Laura demanded. I did. "Are you having an affair?" The word felt like a blade. In that moment, I saw two futures laid out clearly for the first time. One where I lied again, smoothed it over, doubled down on stability, built a family, buried the part of me that kept reaching backward, and one where everything exploded. Marriage, reputation, career. "I need the truth," she said, her voice trembling. I thought about Maya walking away in the rain. I thought about Laura's certainty at the altar. And for the first time, I realized my indecision was already a choice. Yes. The word came out quieter than I expected, but it felt like a detonation in the room. Laura didn't blink at first. She just stared at me, as if waiting for the rest of the sentence. When none came, her face drained of color. "With who?" she asked, her voice steady in a way that scared me more than if she had screamed. "It's not someone from the company," I said quickly. "It's someone from my past." Her jaw tightened. "Maya." It wasn't a question. I nodded. For a few seconds, there was only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic outside. Then Laura stood up so abruptly her chair scraped harshly against the floor. "How long?" she asked. "A few months." "Define a few." "Since the exhibition." She did the math in her head. I watched the realization land. The dinners, the late meetings, the nights I came home distracted. "Did you sleep with her?" she asked. Another pause. Another choice. Yes. That was when her composure cracked. She didn't throw anything. She didn't yell. She just sat back down slowly, like her legs had given out. I married you, she said, almost to herself. I built a life with you. I know. Do you love her? The question felt impossible. I don't know, I said honestly. I never stopped feeling something for her. Laura let out a sharp breath that might have been a laugh if it weren't so hollow. So what am I? She asked. The safer option? The truth was cruel. I thought you were the right choice. That's not the same thing. She stood up again, this time walking toward the hallway. I followed instinctively. Don't, she said without turning around. Just don't. She disappeared into the bedroom and locked the door. I spent that night on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different, less like a home, more like a structure I had vandalized from the inside. In the morning, Laura emerged with red eyes and a suitcase. Where are you going? I asked. To my sister's, she replied flatly. For how long? I don't know. She paused by the front door. I need to ask you something, she said. If I hadn't found out, if I'd never asked, would you have told me? I opened my mouth, then closed it. That was answer enough. She nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. I deserved better than being your compromise, she said quietly. Then she left. The silence afterward was suffocating. I called Maya that afternoon. She answered on the second ring. Did you figure it out? I told her, I said. A long pause. And she left. There was no celebration in her voice. No relief. I'm sorry, she said instead. I chose. I replied, though it didn't feel like victory. Did you? She asked gently. That question lingered. Because Laura leaving wasn't the same as me walking away. I hadn't made a grand declaration. I hadn't fought for Maya. I had simply detonated one life without fully stepping into the other. The company review turned out to be unrelated to me. A different department entirely. The irony wasn't lost on me. Within a week, Laura filed for separation. Friends started calling. My parents were confused, disappointed. I didn't tell them the details. I let them assume we had grown apart. Maya and I started seeing each other openly. At first, it felt like freedom. No more hiding. No more lies. We spent nights together without watching the clock. We talked about what a real future could look like this time. Slower, more intentional. But something had shifted in me. Every time Maya laughed, I felt a flicker of joy, followed by a wave of guilt. Every time we planned something, I wondered if I was chasing passion at the expense of something I had already destroyed. One evening, sitting on her couch, she looked at me carefully. You're not here, she said. I am. No, she replied softly. You're with me, but you're also somewhere else. She was right. I had chosen instability once and feared it. Then I had chosen stability and resented it. Now I had neither. The divorce moved faster than I expected. Laura didn't fight for the house. She didn't argue about the furniture or the savings. It was as if she wanted a clean break, no lingering threads tying her to me. When we met with the mediator, she was composed, almost detached. At one point, while reviewing the paperwork, she looked up and said, I hope she's worth it. There was no venom in her voice. That made it worse. I never meant to hurt you, I said. She gave a faint, tired smile. That's the problem. You never meant anything clearly. That sentence followed me for weeks. Maya and I tried to build something real out of the wreckage. For a while, it worked. Without secrecy, we were softer with each other, more deliberate. We talked openly about money, about expectations, about the mistakes we'd made years ago. I don't want us to burn out again, she told me one night as we cooked dinner together. If we're doing this, we do it differently. I know, I said, and I meant it. I moved into her apartment after the divorce was finalized. The house Laura and I had bought sold quickly. Signing those closing documents felt surreal, like erasing a chapter with a single signature. Living with Maya was intense in a different way now. Not chaotic like before, but emotionally exposed. There was no illusion of safety net. No carefully structured 5-year plan. Just two people trying to prove that love was enough if handled responsibly. For a few months, I convinced myself I had finally aligned my heart and my actions. Then reality began to seep in. My job at the company became uncomfortable. Word about the separation had spread quietly. Laura had kept things dignified, but corporate environments feed on speculation. I started noticing subtle shifts, fewer invitations to meetings, more distant conversations. One afternoon, my manager called me in. "We're restructuring," he said. "Your role is being eliminated." It was delivered clinically, but I knew my distracted performance hadn't helped. The stability I had clung to, the salary, the benefits, disappeared with a handshake and a severance package. When I told Maya, she tried to be supportive. "We'll figure it out," she said, squeezing my hand. "You've wanted to do freelance again anyway." She was right. I had once dreamed about returning to creative work, but now it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like falling backward without a safety harness. Savings were thinner after the divorce. Rent in her apartment was manageable, but tight. The financial pressure that had once strained us began creeping back. One evening, as I sat at her kitchen table reviewing dwindling numbers in my bank account, I felt a familiar tension rising. "Maybe I should look for something corporate again," I muttered. She looked at me carefully. "I thought you hated that world." "I hate being broke more." The words came out sharper than I intended. Her expression changed, not angry, just wounded. "I don't want to go back to how we were," she said quietly, "fighting over every bill." "Neither do I replied. "But love doesn't pay rent." The irony of that statement hit both of us at the same time. Years ago, I had left her because love without stability felt reckless. Now I had left stability for love and found myself circling the same fear. Over the next few months, small arguments became more frequent. Not explosive, just persistent. About expenses. About whose career mattered more in the moment. About sacrifices. One night, after a particularly tense conversation about money, Maya said something that froze me. "Do you ever wonder if you only came back because you were unhappy, not because you were sure about me?" The question sliced through the room. "I chose you," I said. She shook her head slowly. "You left her. That's not the same thing." I stared at her, realizing how similar her words were to Laura's. For the first time, it occurred to me that maybe I had never truly chosen anyone. I had simply run from discomfort, first from chaos, then from boredom, then from guilt. Maya walked to the window, looking out into the dark street. "I don't want to be your rebellion," she said softly. "And I don't want to be your regret either." I didn't know how to answer, because deep down, a terrifying thought had begun forming. What if I hadn't chosen stability over love? What if I had chosen fear over conviction every single time? The night Maya said she didn't want to be my rebellion, I didn't sleep. I lay awake beside her, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, and realized something I had been avoiding for years. I had never actually decided what kind of man I wanted to be. I had only reacted to whatever scared me most in the moment. With Maya in my 20s, I was scared of instability. So I left. With Laura in my 30s, I was scared of emotional emptiness. So I cheated. And now, lying in the dark, I was scared that even after burning my life down, I still didn't know how to build something honest. The next morning, I made coffee before Maya woke up. When she walked into the kitchen, her expression was guarded. "We need to talk," I said. She gave a small, humorless smile. "That phrase hasn't been kind to either of us." "I know." We sat across from each other at the small table by the window, the same table where, months earlier, I had felt like I was reclaiming something I'd lost. "I don't think I came back for the right reasons," I said finally. She didn't interrupt. "I loved you. I still love you. But when I left my marriage, it wasn't some grand act of courage. I didn't wake up certain that you were my future. I confessed because I was cornered, because I was tired of lying. And then I followed the path that was already open." Her eyes glistened, but she stayed composed. "So what are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying you deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, not someone who drifts toward you when everything else collapses." The silence that followed felt final. "For years," she said slowly, "I thought if you just had enough time, you'd realize we were meant to be. I built you up in my head as the love that got away. But maybe you weren't. Maybe you were just the lesson." That hurt, because it was probably true. "I don't regret loving you," she continued, "but I'm tired of being part of your unfinished business." We didn't fight. There was no explosion, no dramatic accusation. Just two people sitting in the quiet aftermath of their own decisions. By the end of that week, I moved out. Not back to Laura. That door was closed for good. She had moved to another city for a new job, I heard through mutual friends. I didn't try to contact her. I had forfeited that right. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just enough space for a bed, a desk, and the weight of my thoughts. For the first time in years, I was alone. No shared spreadsheets. No passionate reconciliations. No one waiting for me to decide who I was going to be. I found freelance work slowly. Projects trickled in. Money was tight, but manageable. The difference was that this time, there was no one else to blame if things went wrong. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the version of my life where I stayed with Laura. Maybe we'd have a child by now. Maybe I'd be climbing the corporate ladder, secure but quietly restless. Other nights, I imagine if I had fought for Maya years ago instead of walking away. If we had grown together instead of apart, maybe we would have learned balance without all this collateral damage. But regret is a deceptive thing. It makes every alternative look cleaner than it ever would have been. The truth is simpler and harsher. I didn't lose love because I chose stability. I lost both because I kept choosing whatever felt safer in the moment instead of standing firmly in any decision. Laura was right. She deserved better than being my compromise. Maya was right. She deserved better than being my escape. And I deserved the consequences of never being brave enough to choose with clarity. Last week, I walked past a photography gallery downtown. For a second, I considered going in. Instead, I kept walking. Not because I don't care, but because for once, I'm trying to stop reaching backward. I chose stability over love once and regretted it. Then I chose love to fix that regret and destroyed stability. In the end, the problem wasn't what I chose. It was that I never fully owned any choice at all. Now I'm learning what it means to do that, even if it means starting from nothing.